swear I wasn't trying to get into anything crazy. I was just curious. I'd read a bunch of stories about people finding weird stuff on the dark web, phones, mystery boxes, strange services, and I wanted to see what the hype was about. You know, one of those things you try once just to say you did it. I wasn't expecting it to ruin my life. I thought I was being smart, covering my tracks, using a VPN and Tor. I didn't even go looking for anything dangerous. All I wanted was a phone, a good one for cheap. My old one was barely holding together and I couldn't afford the latest model. There was this listing that caught my attention. Flagged iPhone 14 Pro Max. New condition. No IMEI tracking. Encrypted. The seller guaranteed it was legit, unlocked, and would work worldwide. It was marked at half the price of a retail model. The description was what sold me. It claimed this phone had been used briefly by someone working for a high-profile organization, and all tracking data was wiped. I figured it was just a stolen device, something passed between sketchy hands, but honestly, who gives a shit? A phone is a phone, so I bought it. The payment was in Bitcoin, and the delivery was fast. 3 days later, a plain black package showed up on my doorstep. There was no label or sender information, just my address written sloppily across the box in marker. My heart was racing as I opened it. Inside was the phone, pristine, no scratches or anything. There was no charger or box, just the phone wrapped in some bubble wrap. It powered on without a hitch. That's when the first weird thing happened. The phone had no welcome screen, no setup. It just opened to the home screen, already logged in, with apps pre-installed. I thought maybe the seller had been lazy and didn't reset it properly, but there were no personal files on it. It was weirdly empty, except for one thing. There was a message notification. No number, just a string of symbols. I thought it might have been spam, but curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. Welcome. Keep the phone on you at all times. We're watching. I swear my stomach dropped when I read that. I wanted to toss the phone right there, but I'd spent a lot on it, and I thought maybe it was just a weird prank from the seller, some sick joke to freak out buyers. I closed the message and tried not to think about it. The phone worked fine otherwise, and I figured that was the end of it. But that night, things got worse. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when the phone vibrated on the nightstand. I grabbed it to see another message. Same symbols, no number. Why aren't you answering? I didn't know what to do. I tried replying, asking, "Who is this?" But the message wouldn't send. Then, right as I was staring at the screen, another text came through. "Look outside." My blood ran cold. I know it sounds cliché, but I froze. For a minute, I didn't want to move. My curtains were closed, but I could see shadows shifting under the streetlights outside. Someone was out there. When I finally worked up the courage to peek, I saw a man standing across the street, under the orange glow of the street lamp. He was wearing a black hoodie, pulled low over his face, but I could tell he was looking right at my window. He didn't move. He just stood there. I backed away from the window, heart pounding, and tried calling the cops. That's when I realized the phone had no dial pad. There was no option to call anyone. The messaging app was the only thing that worked. I grabbed my old phone to call the police, but the call wouldn't go through. Every number I tried ended in dead silence, like my phone was blocked. Then the new phone buzzed again. Another message. "We said to keep the phone on you. Why are you using your old one?" I nearly dropped the phone. Whoever was messaging me, they were watching me. I didn't know if it was the guy outside or someone else, but they knew what I was doing in real time. That's when I made my first mistake. I turned off the new phone. Less than a minute later, the pounding started. It was loud and relentless, fists slamming against my front door like someone was trying to break it down. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, heart hammering in my chest, and slowly crept toward the door. The pounding didn't stop. Whoever was on the other side was furious, slamming their fists so hard the door was rattling in its frame. I peeked through the peephole and my heart nearly stopped. It was the man from outside, the one in the hoodie. But now he had his face pressed against the door, grinning like a maniac. His teeth were rotten, blackened stumps poking out from swollen gums, and his eyes were wide, bloodshot and unblinking. He saw me. He knew I was looking at him. "Open the door," he whispered, his voice muffled through the wood.
We just want to talk." I stumbled back, clutching the knife so tight my knuckles turned white. I didn't know what to do. The pounding started again, harder this time. The whole door shook, and I could hear the wood splintering. Then my phone buzzed again, my old phone this time. I looked down, and a new message appeared on the screen. "If you don't open the door, we'll come in another way." That was it. I ran to my bedroom, locked the door, and called the cops again. This time, the call went through, but the dispatcher's voice was strange, robotic, almost emotionless. "Help is on the way," they said, before hanging up abruptly. I knew something was wrong. I knew I wasn't safe, but I stayed there, curled up on the floor with the knife in my hand, praying that this nightmare would end. The pounding on the front door stopped after a while, but I didn't dare move. I must have fallen asleep at some point, because when I opened my eyes again, it was morning. The house was eerily silent. I tiptoed to the front door, knife still in hand, and peeked outside. The man was gone, but there was something new, a package, sitting neatly on my doorstep. It was the same size and shape as the one the phone had come in. And there was a note taped to the top. "We don't like it when you ignore us." That's when I knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. And whatever I'd gotten myself into, it was much worse than I could have ever imagined.
I didn't touch the package at first. I just stood there, staring at it on my doorstep, my pulse thudding in my ears. It looked identical to the one the phone came in. Black, no labels, nothing that would give away where it came from or what was inside. It sat there like a silent threat, daring me to open it. But after what happened the night before, I knew better than to ignore it. I grabbed some gloves from under the sink. My hands were shaking, and I could feel my throat tighten as I lifted the package. It was heavier than I expected. No sounds from inside, no movement. But I had this awful feeling in my gut, like whatever was inside wasn't just meant to scare me. It felt personal. I carried the package inside and dropped it on the kitchen table. For a while I just sat there, knife in hand, staring at the damn thing. I knew I had to open it, but every instinct told me not to. But the longer I waited, the more I felt like they were watching me, waiting for my next move. It was the kind of pressure that makes you feel like you're suffocating, even when the room is dead silent. Eventually, I gave in. I tore the tape off and opened the box. Inside was a Polaroid camera, and taped to the top of the camera was a single Polaroid picture of me, sleeping. I dropped the camera like it was on fire. My whole body locked up and I couldn't breathe. It was me, curled up on my bed, exactly how I'd fallen asleep last night after hiding from the man at the door. The photo was real. It wasn't some Photoshop trick. Someone had been in my house. Someone had been in the same room with me, standing over my bed, taking pictures while I slept. I felt nauseous, like I was going to throw up. My head was spinning. There was no way this was happening. I scrambled to check every lock, every window. Nothing was broken. Everything was exactly how I left it. How the hell did they get in? Then the phone buzzed.
I knew it was another message before I even looked. And sure enough, there it was. Same weird symbols in the sender's name. I opened the message with shaking hands, my heart thudding painfully in my chest. "You're not alone. We're inside." I nearly threw the phone across the room. My eyes darted around, scanning every shadow, every corner. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like I was on display for whoever was doing this to me. I wanted to scream, but it felt like my throat was glued shut. I had to get out. I grabbed my jacket and bolted for the door. I didn't care where I went, as long as it was away from that house. But the moment I stepped outside, I saw them. 2 men. Standing across the street, near the same street lamp where I'd seen the man in the hoodie the night before. But these weren't random creeps. They were identical, like they'd been copied and pasted from the same template. Same height, same build, same clothes, grey suits, sunglasses, and black gloves. The only thing different about them was the way they stood. One had his hands in his pockets, The other had his arms crossed, but both of them were staring directly at me. I froze on the spot. They didn't move. They didn't blink. They just stood there completely still, like mannequins. My phone buzzed again. "Where do you think you're going?" My hands were slick with sweat as I fumbled with the phone. I looked at the text and felt my stomach drop. Attached to the message was another photo, me, standing at the door. They were taking pictures of me in real time. I stepped back inside, slamming the door shut, and locked every bolt. I leaned against the door, breathing hard, trying to make sense of what was happening. They knew everything I did. They had eyes on me, no matter where I went. And if those men outside were anything like the guy who'd pounded on my door the night before, I was completely screwed. My phone buzzed again. Another message. "Stop running. It won't help. Open the package at the bottom." I stared at the open box on the table. I hadn't noticed it at first, but there was another layer beneath the camera, a thin, black envelope. My hands felt numb as I pulled it out and ripped it open. Inside was a single key and a note. The note was typed, clean, with no mistakes. "You'll need this soon. Someone will come to your door in 5 minutes. Whatever you do, don't let them in." That was it. No explanation, no signature, just a key and a warning that didn't make any sense. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break the phone in half and throw it out the window, but deep down, I knew that wouldn't stop whatever was happening. These people, whoever they were, weren't playing a game. They were serious. And then the doorbell rang. My whole body seized up. I looked at the clock. Exactly 5 minutes had passed since I read the message. Whoever was outside now, they weren't random. They knew exactly when to show up. I crept to the peephole, heart hammering against my ribs, and peeked out. There was a woman standing on the porch. She looked normal enough, mid-30s, blonde hair, wearing a simple black jacket. She was holding a clipboard, smiling politely like she was selling something. But something was off about her smile. It was too wide, too perfect, like someone who'd practiced in front of a mirror until they got it right. She knocked again, louder this time. "Hello? I just need to talk to you for a moment." Her voice was cheerful, but it had this strange, flat undertone, like she was reciting lines from a script. The phone buzzed. Another message. "Don't open the door, no matter what." The woman knocked again, harder. Her smile never faltered. "Sir, I know you're home. I saw you just a moment ago. Please, it'll only take a second." She pressed her face closer to the door, and for a brief moment I saw something horrifying. Her eyes. They weren't human. They were too big, too round, and completely black, like the eyes of a doll or a shark. She saw me looking through the peephole, and her smile stretched wider, almost splitting her face in two. She tapped a long, sharp nail against the door, as if to say, "I know you're there." "Open the door," she whispered, her voice suddenly cold and empty, "or we'll open it for you." The phone buzzed one last time. "Use the key! There's a trap door in the bedroom closet. Go now." I didn't hesitate. I bolted toward the bedroom, heart racing, and threw open the closet door. There it was, a small metal hatch, hidden beneath the floorboards. I jammed the key into the lock and yanked it open, just as I heard the front door creak open. I didn't wait to see what came through. I dropped into the darkness below, pulling the hatch shut behind me, and prayed that whatever I'd gotten myself into wasn't about to swallow me whole. This wasn't just about a phone anymore. This was something much worse. I landed hard on the floor below, barely catching myself on my hands and knees. The air was thick with dust, and the faint smell of mildew hit me immediately. I coughed, trying to get my bearings, but the darkness down here was absolute. I fumbled for the flashlight on the phone and turned it on. The weak glow revealed that I was in some kind of crawl space, narrow, cold, with wooden beams overhead and walls made of crumbling concrete. I could still hear faint noises from above, footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving through the house. Someone was inside, and they weren't in a hurry. They knew I had nowhere to go. Every step echoed through the silence, making my skin crawl. They were searching, taking their time, and I knew they'd find the hatch eventually. I shined the phone's light around, looking for any kind of way out. The crawl space stretched further than I thought, like it ran under the entire house. I moved quickly, trying not to make too much noise. The space was barely tall enough to crouch in, forcing me to crawl through the dirt and debris. Every little sound I made felt deafening in the silence, but I had no choice. I had to keep moving. That's when I noticed something strange. There were things down here, not just random junk or tools. There were objects, things that didn't belong. A child's shoe, a cracked mirror, a doll missing its eyes. There was even a photograph pinned to the wall with a rusty nail. I shined the light on it, and my heart nearly stopped. It was another picture of me. This one was older, taken from some other moment I couldn't place. I was at a party, drink in hand, laughing, but I didn't remember the moment. I didn't even remember who the people were around me. That's when it hit me. They'd been watching me for a long time.
I heard a noise behind me, a faint creak from the hatch above. I killed the flashlight and held my breath. There was a soft click as the hatch opened and then silence. I could feel them, whoever they were, standing right above me, listening. The air in the crawl space felt heavy, suffocating. I bit down on my lip to stop myself from breathing too loud. Then I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. "Come out, or we'll come in after you." It was the same voice as the woman at the door, but it sounded distorted, like it was layered with something else, something that wasn't human. I started crawling faster, heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed to put as much distance between me and that hatch as possible. The crawl space seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. There were other things scattered in the dirt, old toys, broken phones, strange symbols scratched into the walls, but I didn't stop to look at them. I just kept moving. That's when the phone buzzed again. I almost screamed. The noise was like a gunshot in the silence, and I fumbled to silence it, but it was too late. A loud thump came from the hatch, and I heard something drop down into the crawl space with me. I turned the flashlight back on, and that's when I saw it. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. The thing crawling toward me had a body like a person, but its limbs were too long, its movements too jerky, like a puppet on tangled strings. Its face, if you could call it a face, was smooth, pale, and featureless, except for a wide, unnatural grin stretched ear to ear. It moved in bursts, fast, then slow, like it was glitching out. It crawled through the dirt toward me, each movement sending a sharp jolt of terror down my spine. The phone buzzed again in my hand. I glanced down for just a second. "Don't let it touch you." I didn't need to be told twice. I turned and crawled as fast as I could, panic taking over. I could hear it behind me, dragging itself through the dirt, its limbs cracking and twisting as it moved. It was fast, too fast, and the space was too tight to stand up or run. My heart pounded in my ears as I clawed my way forward, hands scraping against sharp rocks and debris. The thing behind me was gaining. I could hear it, wet breathing, like something trying to imitate a human, but getting it all wrong.
Then I saw it, a metal door at the far end of the crawl space. I had no idea where it led, but it was my only chance. I threw myself toward it, fingers scrambling for the handle. The thing was inches away. I could feel it, cold, rotten air brushing against the back of my neck like it was breathing down my spine. I yanked the door open and crawled through just as one of its long, twisted hands swiped at my leg, missing by a hair. I slammed the door shut behind me, plunging the thing back into the darkness. But the sound it made, I'll never forget it. It laughed. Not a normal laugh, something high-pitched and broken, like a distorted recording played backward. It didn't bang on the door. It didn't try to follow me. It just sat there in the dark, laughing softly, as if it knew something I didn't. I backed away from the door, my whole body trembling. I was in another small room now, cold concrete walls with a single flickering light bulb overhead. There was no furniture, no windows, just the door behind me and another one in front of me, painted red and covered in strange symbols that looked like they'd been scratched into the paint with a knife. My phone buzzed again. Another message. You're almost there. Keep going. I didn't know who was sending these messages, or how they knew where I was, but they were the only thing keeping me alive. I took a deep breath, tried to steady my shaking hands, and reached for the red door. The moment I touched the handle, the phone buzzed again. Don't look behind you. My breath hitched. I could feel it. Something standing just inches behind me, so close I could almost feel its breath on my neck. My fingers trembled on the door handle. The message buzzed again. If you look, it's over. I squeezed my eyes shut, turned the handle, and yanked the door open. I stumbled through, slamming it shut behind me, and only then did I dare open my eyes. I was standing in a hallway, narrow, dimly lit, with flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead like dying insects. The air smelled strange, like burnt plastic and something sweet, almost like rotting fruit. The phone buzzed one last time. You can't escape. Not yet. There's more. I knew, deep down, that whatever was happening wasn't just random. This was planned. Every step, every move. They were guiding me, leading me somewhere. And whatever was waiting at the end of this hallway, it wasn't going to let me leave, not alive. This wasn't just a phone from the dark web, this was a trap. I stood there, staring down the dim hallway, heart racing, hands slick with sweat. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed like dying insects, flickering just enough to make everything feel wrong. The phone felt heavier in my hand now, like it was more than just a device. It was connected to whatever nightmare I was trapped in. I knew turning back wasn't an option. Something had been breathing down my neck in that other room, and the message had been clear. If I looked, it was over. I wasn't ready to find out what over meant, not yet. The hallway seemed endless, stretching far beyond what made sense. It shouldn't have been this long. This wasn't a mansion or a bunker. This was supposed to be the crawl space beneath my house. But here I was, standing in a corridor that shouldn't exist. The walls were a sickly beige, stained with black streaks, and the smell of burnt plastic mixed with that sweet, rotting odor clung to the air. And then the buzzing came again. Another message. I swallowed hard, hands trembling, and opened it. Keep walking. You're almost there. There was no signature, no hint of who was sending these messages. I didn't know if they were helping me or if they were part of the trap. All I knew was that stopping felt like a death sentence. So I kept going. I walked slowly, every step feeling heavier than the last. The further I went, the worse the smell got. It was thick now, like decay, wrapping around me and clinging to my skin. My head started to throb, and it became harder to breathe, like the air was turning into syrup. But I couldn't stop. I knew if I stopped, something would catch me. The hallway seemed to twist in ways that didn't make sense. At one point, the walls curved inward like a funnel, forcing me to squeeze through a narrow gap. I swear I could hear something behind the walls, a low, wet scratching, like nails dragging across concrete. Then the phone buzzed again. Turn left at the door. Don't go right. I glanced up and saw what the message was talking about. Up ahead, the hallway split into two directions, left and right. Both paths looked identical, dim and flickering with the same dying lights. But there was something off about the right path. It felt wrong, like it was waiting for me. Without thinking, I turned left. The moment I did, I heard footsteps, fast, heavy, and far too many of them, pounding down the right-hand corridor. Whatever was down there had been waiting for me to make the wrong choice. I could hear it sprinting now, dragging something behind it that scraped and clanged against the floor. I didn't stop to look. I just kept moving. The hallway began to change the further I went. The walls became warped, as if they were made of something organic, flesh-like, pulsing slightly under the dim light. The air grew colder, and my breath came out in ragged gasps. I felt like I was sinking deeper into something I couldn't escape from, like the walls were alive, and they knew I didn't belong here. Then I saw it, a door at the end of the hallway. It was different from the others, old, wooden, and carved with strange symbols, like runes scratched in desperation. Something about it felt final, like whatever was behind it was the end of the line. The phone buzzed one more time. "This is your last chance. Open the door." I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the handle and pulled. What I saw on the other side, I can barely describe it. The room beyond the door was huge, impossibly large. It looked like a warehouse, but everything inside was wrong. Rows and rows of shelves filled with objects that shouldn't exist. Jars with things floating inside, old phones buzzing with messages in languages I couldn't understand, photos pinned to the walls, each showing different people, all of them terrified, just like me. And in the center of the room was a massive glass tank, filled with some kind of dark liquid. I walked closer, my heart pounding, drawn toward it like I was under a spell. Inside the tank was a figure, floating lifelessly in the black water. It was me. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. The figure inside the tank looked exactly like me. Same face, same clothes, even the same scar on my left hand. But it wasn't moving. It was dead, or at least it looked that way. The phone buzzed again, louder this time, like it was demanding my attention. "You need to leave. They're coming." I spun around, and that's when I saw them, the men in suits. They were standing at the far end of the room, perfectly still, watching me with those same cold, empty expressions. But now, there were more of them. A dozen, maybe more, all identical, their faces blank and unnatural. And they weren't alone. Behind them was the thing from the crawl space, the twisted, grinning creature that had chased me before. It crawled out from the shadows, limbs cracking and bending in ways that defied logic, that same awful broken laugh spilling from its mouth. They started moving toward me, slow, deliberate, like they knew I had nowhere to go. The phone buzzed again. "The tank! Get inside!" I stared at the message, my mind racing. Get inside? Was this some kind of sick joke? But the men were getting closer, their footsteps echoing through the vast room. The creature dragged itself behind them, its grin widening as it locked eyes with me. I didn't have a choice. I ran toward the tank, heart hammering in my chest. The glass was cold under my fingers, and there was a small hatch on the side, just big enough for me to crawl through. I yanked it open and climbed inside. The liquid was thick and cold, swallowing me whole as I sank into the darkness. It filled my nose and mouth, choking me, but I didn't fight it. I let it take me. The hatch slammed shut behind me and everything went silent. I floated there, suspended in the black liquid, feeling my body go numb. The figures outside the tank stared at me, their expressions blank, like they were waiting for something. The grinning creature pressed its face against the glass, its eyes wide and hungry. And then, slowly, it started to fade. The men disappeared, one by one, until the room was empty. The thing's grin lingered for just a moment longer, before it too vanished into the shadows. The phone buzzed one last time, but I couldn't reach it. The liquid weighed me down, pulling me deeper, and the light from the phone grew dimmer and dimmer until there was nothing left but darkness. I thought that was the end. I thought I'd escaped, but I was wrong. I woke up back in my bedroom, gasping for air, the phone clutched in my hand. Everything looked normal, like none of it had happened. But as I sat there, trying to catch my breath, I noticed something. There was a message waiting for me. "Welcome back. You'll get used to it soon." That's when I realized I hadn't escaped. I'd traded places, and now someone else is out there, wearing my face, living my life, and I'm still trapped here, waiting. For the next person to buy the phone, waking up back in my room should have felt like a relief, but it wasn't. Something was wrong. The air felt off, thicker somehow, and the sounds of the world outside were distant, like they were coming from behind a layer of glass. My chest felt tight, and when I tried to stand, my legs gave out beneath me. It felt like I didn't belong in my own skin, like I was wearing someone else's body, or maybe something was wearing me. I looked down at the phone in my hand. It was still there, the same cursed device that had started all of this. But this time, the home screen was different. There were new apps, new notifications, messages, missed calls, all from people I didn't recognize. My heart raced. Whoever had taken my place, they were already living my life. And then the phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video message. The sender was unknown, as always. With a lump in my throat, I pressed play. The video was grainy, but clear enough for me to recognize what I was looking at. It was my apartment. The camera was shaky, moving through my kitchen, my living room, as if the person filming was walking through my home. Then, the camera turned toward the bedroom door, the same door I'd crawled behind before falling into that nightmare crawl space. The door creaked open, and I saw someone sleeping in my bed. It was me. Or at least, it looked like me. Same hair, same clothes, even the same scar on my hand. But it wasn't me. I was here, watching. And then the camera shifted, showing the person holding it. I nearly dropped the phone. It was the creature, the twisted, grinning thing from the crawl space. It was holding the phone with its long, spindly fingers, tilting its head at an unnatural angle, smiling into the camera as if to say, "You're mine now." The video ended abruptly, and a new message appeared on the screen. "Enjoy your new home. You're one of us now." My stomach dropped. I wanted to scream, to tear the phone apart, to run, but I knew there was no point. I was stuck. Whatever had happened, I was no longer part of the real world. I was trapped in whatever this place was. That's when the phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from someone else. "Whoever you are, you need to help me. I bought this phone, and now my life is in danger." It hit me all at once, like a punch to the gut. I wasn't the first person this had happened to, and I wouldn't be the last. This phone, it wasn't just a tool. It was a trap, a gateway between two realities, swapping lives like some kind of twisted exchange program. And now, it was my turn to watch someone else fall. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification for an incoming call. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the screen. The caller ID showed my own name. I didn't want to answer, but my finger moved on its own, swiping across the screen. The line connected, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence on the other end. Then, I heard a voice, my voice, but twisted, distorted, like it was being dragged through static. "Enjoy it while you can," the voice whispered. I know I did. The call ended, and I was left staring at the black screen, the weight of what had happened finally sinking in. Asterisk, I had traded places with something that was wearing my skin, living my life, and I was stuck here, in whatever liminal hell existed behind that phone. Days passed, or maybe it was weeks. Time didn't work the same here. The phone buzzed constantly, messages and notifications pouring in, each one more disturbing than the last. Photos of people I didn't know, videos of events I'd never been to, all tied to a life that wasn't mine anymore. And the worst part, every once in a while I'd get messages from them, the ones still on the outside, begging for help, for answers, for a way out. But I couldn't help them. I was part of the cycle now. I tried everything, factory resets, smashing the phone, even ignoring it for days. But no matter what I did, it always came back. The phone was the only thing that mattered here, the only connection between the world I'd lost and the twisted reality I was trapped in. And then, one day, I got a message that made my blood run cold. Someone new just bought the phone. It's time. I knew what it meant. The cycle was starting over. I stared at the screen, heart pounding as the phone vibrated in my hand. Another incoming call. The caller ID was familiar, my own name just like before. I answered, and the voice on the other end was soft, hesitant, scared. "Hello?" a man's voice whispered. I think I bought this phone by accident. Something weird is happening and I don't know what to do." For a moment I didn't respond. What could I say? There was no way out of this. The only thing I could do was lie. "Don't worry," I whispered, forcing the words out through clenched teeth. "Just keep the phone on you at all times. We're watching." There was a long pause on the other end, and I could almost feel the fear radiating through the line. Who are you?" the man asked. I smiled, the same twisted grin I'd seen on that thing in the crawl space. "You'll find out soon enough." The call ended, and the phone went silent. I sat there staring at the black screen, knowing that somewhere, out in the real world, someone else was about to fall into the same trap, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The end, or maybe just the beginning.